In the midst of this global crisis, the voices for justice are revealing what really matters. It is time for Planetary Makeover. Here we feature solutions and modern miracles in documentary videos that offer hope for our future and remind us all of our spiritual source. Long ago, it was forecast that at this time in history, extraordinary teachers, including the world teacher, would emerge to help us as we build a world that works for everyone. Now, here's your host of Planetary Makeover, Mr. David Mynott.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Planetary Makeover. Today we're going to, luckily, feature yet another appearance by Dick Larson, another of his videos, and this time it's Dick that's being interviewed, not the other way around. And this episode, Who is the World Teacher Inquiring Minds Want to Know, fits in nicely with his video. Now, of course, remember, as in all our shows, we're not here to convince you of anything. We're simply here to present the material. And the convincing part is up to you. Run it past your intuition and your common sense, and if it has the ring of truth for you, as Benjamin Cram was fond of saying, then you can take it to heart. A lot of our information comes from the Ageless Wisdom teaching, and the most recent, I should say, very active proponent of that was Benjamin Cram, who I just mentioned. He wrote books about it, over a dozen. He lectured all over the world, but he was also an artist and esotericist. So he had studied this information for decades before he spoke of it. And he created many works of art based on that information. So he has a lot to show you, and we have a lot to share with you as a result. As do those who came before him. Alice Bailey, Helena Roderick, and Madame Blavatsky, and many others. And in more recent times, of course, you can also read the books and listen to the videos of Jiddu Krishnamurti, who was a disciple of the world teacher, and we'll get more into that later. So in this show, apart from not wanting to convince you anything, we would like you to consider that we, meaning you and I, can create a world that is not the current chaotic and suffering and sick world in so many ways, including the planet, but one of reason and authenticity, of trust, sincerity, honesty, love, brotherhood, equality, justice for all, healthcare, housing, education, a clean environment, and world peace for all. This is how mankind will progress, and without this, we will falter. So, as always, we assert, along with those other principles, that mankind is not alone. That may seem like a heady task that I put before humanity just now, but we have help of an extraordinary kind, known as the Masters of Wisdom, the spiritual hierarchy, the Lords of Compassion. These are all different names for mankind's elder brothers. Mankind's elder brothers, meaning you and I and everyone else, will eventually be a part of the hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy for this planet. You'll be one of mankind's elder brothers, and then you'll be helping out your younger brothers and sisters, like me, who still needs guidance, and anyone else. So at the head of this group, this extraordinary group, is the world teacher, who's the most advanced of all the hierarchy at this point. And he has been predicted by many people over thousands of years. But to first give you one of the most obvious ones, the the religious predictions. He is predicted by, for instance, the Christians as the Christ, those of the Jewish faith as the Messiah, the Muslims as the Imam Mahdi, the Hindus await him as the Kalki avatar, and the Buddhists await him as the latest incarnation of Maitreya Buddha. They at least got the name right, because that is his name, Maitreya. But he is not a religious figure, per se. He is a spiritual teacher in the broadest sense. So he's here for everyone. Everyone from the atheists and the agnostics to the fundamentalist Christians or of any ilk. And he does not, nor do the masters, want you to believe in them, in him or them. They are not looking for followers. There is no doctrine, no dogma, no guilt, no shame, no fear connected with any of this. In fact, the world teacher has seen part of his role as helping eliminate fear and guilt and shame from the hearts and minds of humanity. So, that brings us to the video for today, which is another Dick Larson creation. And this time, Mr. Larson is the one on the hot seat being interviewed, though they're pretty gentle with him. Though he can handle any kind of questioning, I think, after all his decades of speaking on the subject. So the subject, of course, is the world teacher, Maitreya. And who is he? He is a man like other men, but one of incredible spiritual stature and power, who is both humble and simple. Like the rest of the masters, he just exudes love, energy, all the time, for everyone, including all those people that don't believe in him, or are afraid of him, or might hate the whole idea of the world teacher. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. All that matters is that we're doing the work. The work being right relations with all of our fellow men and working for justice and love. For that is what the masters exude, and that's what we are at our core when we are at our best, when you strip away all the distortions. Because the idea is divinity is everywhere. There is nothing that is not divine. There is nothing that isn't God. So you are God too, with a small g, as are the masters. And they see that divinity in you. They see you as a divine being, not just a physical human being, as we say in the Ageless Wisdom teaching, not just a dense physical object, physical, mental, emotional, and living on the dense physical plane. You are much more than that. You are all of these things and more. So that's something to keep in mind while you're watching the video and while you're listening to this show, because that is our theme. So Maitreya, to talk a little bit more about him, the world teacher, who is the subject of the show, he's an avatar that's wielding incredibly powerful energies in combinations that have never been wielded before on this planet. And he is in turn overshadowed by other avatars, such as the avatar of peace and equilibrium, the avatar of synthesis, and the avatar of another energy for which we don't have a name yet. So, as I said, he loves everyone unconditionally, and that's what they exude. That's their message, and their message is that we, here on Earth, can restore this planet and bring heaven to Earth, and they will assist us. They are not here to rule. They are here to school. They are here to teach, in the broadest sense, and in the best sense, all of humanity. Now, after the video plays, or during, or even now, we encourage you to leave messages for us at our Facebook page. We're at hashtag Planetary Makeover, and to comment so that we can learn from you. Because having this position on this show as a writer or a producer or a host, behind the scenes, technical support, all of this work, this doesn't give us any special status. We are the same as you. So we are learning from each other. And that's why we need your feedback. Because I'm sure there's something you thought of that we did not. So, on that score, I'd like to begin the video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this afterwards. Thank you.
Hello, this is Quest 4, and I'm Jan Storm.
And I'm Reverend Rex Brandenburg.
On last week's show, Dick Larson was our guest, and we had such a wonderful time that we asked him back. We were talking about transmission meditation, and we just forgot about the time, and there was such a wonderful thing to hear something new coming into the field. So we asked Dick back, and he is our guest on this show, and we're going to be talking about the new millennium. Is it New Hope? Thank you, Dick, for being here, and welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes.
It's wonderful to be back.
And so we're going to talk about the millennium.
Yes, one of the people that I mentioned last week was Benjamin Cram, a man out of London, England, who is an artist, and who has been going around the world for the last 25 years, giving talks and teaching people about transmission meditation, and also talking about what we can expect to happen in the near future.
And I think everybody's interested in knowing that. We all read the newspapers with the psychic predictions and earthquakes and floods and presidents and all this stuff, and let's see if we can bring that a little closer to home instead of big events, maybe what's going on as a whole.
It's important that I say this at the outset, that nobody needs to believe what I'm going to say. I just have my information, and I want to share it. And if people believe 10% of it as a possibility, then so be it. That's not my job. My job is simply to share the information. And most of it is things that Benjamin Cram is talking about and that make a lot of sense to me. And I'm firmly convinced. You were talking about the world now, and there are a lot of problems out there. I mean, it doesn't look very pretty right now. There are a lot of homeless people. We see homeless people on the freeway collecting money. We see them sleeping in the parks. In our own country, much less around the world. There are people starving. Every 4.5 seconds, as you and I sit here and speak, someone starves to death, mostly children. Yes, every 4.5 seconds. It's awful. And this is a world with a 10% surplus of food. And we're just not distributing it. It's sitting in these big storage bins because we can't get the right price for it, or London can't get the right price for it, or wherever. And so it's sitting there rotting.
Yeah, and also, though, when we do get it there, then we run into a secondary problem, which is probably even bigger. It's not getting to the right people. The governments that it's going to are keeping the food, and they're not distributing it.
Exactly. Distribution is the problem. That's exactly right. So we have those problems. We have poor medical care around the world. Doctors with Borders respond to emergencies, but they can't do it all. I read just in the paper the other day that some hospitals are closing their emergency rooms because so many people don't have medical insurance, they can't afford it, or they're unemployed and they don't have it, that they're going to emergency rooms just to get their day-to-day medical treatment.
That's right.
And the hospitals can't afford it anymore, and they're going broke. The educational system, it's broken, and nobody knows how to fix it. So there are just unbelievable problems around the world. Little dictators popping up here and there all over the place, and we certainly know about that with the tragedy of 9/11, September 11th, when hundreds of people lives were lost. And so we know very well about the tragedies and the anger and the fighting that's going on around the world. I think
that was the first time it really touched us in a way that we could physically see it, rather than think of it as something that happens far off.
There are a lot of Other problems, money is God right now.
That's right.
Greed is rampant.
Oh, yes.
And the money calls the shots. And so it's hard to find good news. But I want to share with you that there is good news.
Absolutely.
There is good news, but it's hard to find. And if you look closely, you'll find it in small articles in the back of magazines, small articles in the back of newspapers. A wonderful source of good news are websites. Responsible news organizations like IPS News and other international news services have some of these wonderful stories that the media doesn't really know what to do with. You're not going to see it on TV. Lots of things, well, some of them you do see, and then we forget. For example, somebody was mentioning earlier about the Berlin Wall.
Yes.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, people come with their picks and their hammers, and they go at that wall and they tear that wall down. And they're sitting on top of the wall, and they're looking through holes in the wall, celebrating. And the two Germanys, East and West Germany,
Nobody did anything.
Nobody did anything. And yet, over the years, so many people had been killed trying to climb the wall, climb the barbed wire, and they're getting shot down. And yet, this happened. Nobody went to stop it. And now the Germanys are united, East Germany and West Germany. Nobody knew that was going to happen. People's jaws just dropped when that was on TV.
I remember that. It was quite a shock. It's like, excuse me, did I go to sleep and wake up 10 years later or something? What happened?
And then a man from the Soviet Union named Gorbachev comes over to President Ronald Reagan and says, I've had enough of this. Let's have peace. Let's sign an arms agreement. Let's get rid of the arms race. And we have an unprecedented arms agreement that nobody thought, the anti-ballistic missile treaty that nobody thought would happen. He goes back to the Soviet Union and says, there's not enough individual responsibility around here, let's break this thing up. He presents glasnost, and the Soviet Union disappears.
Overnight again.
Yes, completely unexpected. Now, I call these miracles.
Yeah,
they are miracles.
You don't have to if you don't want to, but that's what I call it.
Well, a miracle is something beyond your understanding, that's all.
That's all.
Yes. South Africa, Nelson Mandela, black man, sitting in prison for 28 years in South Africa. He says God told him to write a letter to President de Klerk. And he laughingly responded. He said, I can't even get the warden of the prison's attention. But he wrote the letter anyway. De Klerk, after the fact, said he got the letter and God told him to set Nelson Mandela free. I'm getting chills as I tell the story. To set Nelson Mandela free. And after 28 years, people even forgot he was alive.
Oh, yes.
So long.
Of course.
Not only is he set free, but de Klerk declares they get rid of apartheid, one of the worst prejudicial evils in the history of the world. And Nelson Mandela, a black man, is elected president of South Africa.
Isn't that wonderful?
That is a miracle.
That is a miracle.
Out of nowhere.
But you see, our media today, we don't have news. We have sensationalism.
Absolutely.
That's what the
certainly
people
are
in
want.
not
10-second
the
sound
same.
bites.
That's right.
Yes.
Sensationalism is not necessarily news.
Right.
And I would have to agree with you. There really is a lot more good in the world.
Yes, but we have to look for it because there's so much stress in life right now.
Oh, yes.
And we're too
really
busy to look for it, is what it boils down to.
Yes, we are. In most families, both couples are working just to pay the rent.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a difficult time, but there is good stuff happening. I've talked about some of the political and social things that are happening. There are also religious and spiritual things happening.
I'd like to stop there and go on to some of those, because that was going to be one of my next questions.
Good.
What is going on in the spiritual and religious world?
Well, there are many unexplained events that the media doesn't know what to do with, so they don't address them. And again, you have to look in all the other places to find these things. There are statues and paintings that bleed real human blood.
That's right.
They've tested it. That's real human blood with the platelets removed so it won't clot. But they've taken these statues, they've done everything to them. They've x-rayed them, they've given them MRIs, anything they can think of to these statues. They can't find the source of the blood. Or statues that weep real human tears, or paintings that weep real human tears. Or 100% pure olive oil coming from paintings. And they can't find the source of this.
Now,
and people that witness them are being healed.
That's right.
They did find, I know you remember the incident in India where all those statues were drinking milk.
Yes.
The specific
That
statues.
was Ganesh, was the name of the statue.
Yeah,
And
it was
then
the elephant god.
miracle.
They did find that they're now debunking that, because they did find that the statues are so porous that if you hold a teaspoon or whatever of milk to it, it does get inhaled by the porous statue. And it's not really drinking, it's just you can put anything up there. It didn't even have to be milk, it worked with anything.
Well,
but you see,
I don't want to be contentious,
yes.
but there are many people who will disagree with you because they witnessed bronze statues where the milk disappeared from the spoon.
I'm just putting out plain devil's advocate here.
Stone statues. I've seen video, a friend of mine actually went to a Buddhist temple in Los Angeles and held out the spoon to a stone statue of Ganesh, that kind of elephant-shaped god of the Buddhists, and it disappeared. And this happened worldwide for 4 days. In India, they ran out of milk. You couldn't buy milk in India because everyone was doing this. It was just unbelievable. London shut down. The line was miles long of people wanting to get into the temples and see the statues. It was really an amazing, unexplained event, I think. It was unexplained. There are others. There's a building in Clearwater, Florida called the Seminole Finance Building. It's a 4-story tall building, all glass. And about 3 days before Christmas, I think it was 3 years ago, it might have been 4 years ago, I think it was 3, about 2 or 3 days before Christmas, people were driving by, coming to work and so on, and boom, in the front of this building, in Technicolor, vivid color, an image of the Madonna, Mary, on the front of this building, 4 stories tall. Nobody could explain where it came from. It was unmistakable what this image was. It was clear as a bell. Traffic was backed up for 7 miles, people trying to get in and see this. And it was just unbelievable. Yet everybody was calm and quiet, and it is there to this day. Nobody can explain it. Somebody threw some acid on it, and it rained the next day and washed itself off, and it's just fine.
And it's still there, huh?
It's still there. The owner of the building has set aside as fenced-off part of the parking lot and put in benches for meditation for people to come.
Oh, that's
nice. You can
nice.
even see it at night. It's been on ABC, CNN. It's been on all the news. Nobody can explain where this came from right before Christmas.
And it's there in the evening, so it can't be a reflection of the sun.
No. It's still there.
Well, the interesting thing in our world of technology today is that we have the idea that we must be able to explain everything.
Yes.
And you see, this is, you were referring to the media, this is what's happened with our media. They take an abstract idea that they cannot explain, and then they will say, like you were saying, that the porous stone absorb the milk.
Yes.
You see, this is a great example of your intellect turning around and biting you in the butt. Because you can analyze anything and everything away. You can analyze all your faith away.
And the problem is the media go to the churches, and the churches won't confirm or deny it because they don't want to get in trouble. And if they can't get anybody to confirm or deny it, they're not going to show it on the air.
Exactly.
It's that simple. So it just doesn't make the airwaves.
That's right.
It just doesn't. And so there are all of these things happening in our world behind the scenes, but if you look, if you pay attention, they're there. The question is, are they all coincidence?
Oh, I don't believe there is such a thing as coincidence. I don't think there is such a thing.
I don't either.
At all.
I agree with Benjamin Cram, who by the way, I've met with Benjamin Cram several times. I've actually interviewed Benjamin Cram. He's a very, very calm, not a fanatical guy at all. Very convinced, very convincing, and just a very, very nice, delightful man. And I agree with him. I have the conviction that he has that these are signs.
Absolutely.
That they're signs that a big change is on the way for humanity, and that there is hope. That God is telling us that He has not abandoned us. That God is telling us that there is hope and there are changes coming. And I believe that one of those changes coming is that it's time for a great teacher to come. And about every 2,500 years, we have a great teacher in this world. If you look historically over the years, all the way back to Hermes and Hercules and all the way through to Confucius and Buddha and so on, Jesus, these great teachers have come. And you were going to ask, you had asked me about the millennium, and I want to say that I don't think the millennium is the big deal. I think the new age is the big deal. Now, I'm not a new ager, okay? But if people studied astronomy, not astrology, astronomy, they would see that our solar system and our sun doesn't sit still in our galaxy. It moves through the heavens in a circular orbit. And it takes about 25,000 years to complete that orbit. And as it goes through that orbit, it comes closer to each of 12 constellations in its circle. And those constellations we call the Zodiac. And as we come close to one of those constellations, each constellation has its own energy, has its own influence on not just the solar system, but on our planet Earth. We say that we are in the age of whatever that constellation is. For the last 2,500 years, we have been in the age of Pisces. We have been near Pisces. The great teacher Jesus came to inaugurate the age of Pisces.
That's right.
Right.
The symbol for Pisces is the fish. It is no accident that the symbol for Christianity is the fish.
Exactly.
He chose fishermen. He fed the crowd with fish.
Yep.
There are all of these fish symbols in the Bible, and that's because we're in the age of Pisces. And two of the strong aspects of Pisces are individuality. Man has come out of the herd over the last 2,000 years, the me generation.
Right.
And we have become individuals. And the other one is a dedication to an ideal. Now, usually we're dedicated to our own ideals, so it causes separation. But it is a direction humanity needed to go into. And those are two of the strong influences of Pisces. There's a little vignette in the Christian Bible in the New Testament where Jesus forecasts the return of Christ. And that little vignette is a very subtle one, but I'd like to mention it, and that is, he sends his disciples into town, and he says, look for a man carrying a pot of water.
Yes.
Right.
That's the symbol for what?
That's for the symbol for Aquarius.
Of course.
The next age. We are now leaving the influence of Pisces, and the Earth is moving into the influence and the proximity of the constellation of Aquarius. In that little vignette, he foretold when he would be back, I believe.
Yeah.
And very unusual for a man carrying a pot of water in those days, because women carried
water.
And they found the man with the pot of water, and they inquired within, and they found the upper room, and that's where they had the Last Supper. And so in that little vignette, he talked about when he would return, I believe. And I believe that it's an interesting time, because all of the world's major religions are expecting their great teacher about this time. They say the signs are there. For example, the Jewish rabbis and teachers say that most of the signs are there for the Messiah to appear.
Exactly.
But
the Buddhists...
They didn't agree that Jesus was their Messiah at that
not
time.
At all.
No, but they are preparing. I have spent some time in Israel. They are preparing in Israel today. There are schools in Israel today training the priest for even the red heifer, the blood sacrifice. I mean, this is where they're...
Red heifer has come.
Yes, yes.
The red heifer has been here, and they have passed all the tests of the prophecies, and the red heifer that the Jews have been expecting for thousands of years is now here. It's the 7th red heifer.
Okay, hold it.
Which is a sign the Messiah is about to come.
For our audience, would you two please explain the red heifer?
It was a prophecy. An ancient Jewish prophecy said that the 7th red heifer, and then it went into this long description of how this red cow would look. And this cow was born, and I actually have seen a picture of it. It was in a Newsweek magazine, as a matter of fact. There was an article about it. And it fulfills all the prophecies of the ancient Jewish prophecy that says that, and when it comes, it says a great teacher, probably the Messiah, is about to appear. The Buddhists are expecting the 5th Buddha. The Hindus are expecting the return of Krishna. The Muslims are either looking, depending on the sect, they're either looking for the Imam Mahdi or the Messiah. So all of the world's, the Christians are looking for Christ, and the Jews are looking for the Messiah. So all of the world's major religions are looking for their great teacher at about this time, and I believe that teacher will be all wrapped into one.
Oh, I think
that
probably
teacher,
right.
These are signs that teacher is about to come.
Now the question is, when he does, he, she, it, whatever comes, will it be recognized?
Good question.
Of course, television.
Most people are looking. Most people are worried about the Antichrist right now.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Cram has said something that makes all the sense in the world to me. He has said that we don't have to worry about that because the Antichrist has come and gone.
Oh.
He has said that the Antichrist is actually an energy released into the world to break down the old order, and it was released originally through Nero, which if you read Revelation, the first part of Revelation and the torment was about Nero. The beast 666, if you look at any good Bible, they'll have a footnote that says numerology was very big then.
Yes,
Oh,
it
yes.
That says that 666 is the total of the numbers represented in the letters that make up the name Caesar Nero. He was the beast 666. And it was released then, and to break down the old Roman dispensation, the old Roman order, and pave the way for Christianity and Christendom. And now, Benjamin Cram says that the Antichrist has been released through Hitler and Mussolini and the generals in Japan. Hitler
The
did
energy.
everything that the Bible says the Antichrist would do. He was incredibly evil. Millions and millions of people were sacrificed and killed in that
Exactly.
war. He had fooled millions of people for many years into thinking he was their great savior, going to lead them into this perfect world.
Yeah.
He did everything the Antichrist was predicted to do, and he was defeated by the by the Allied powers, and not put down forever. The Bible says for a time and half a time, or an age and half an age. But for now, the Antichrist has come and gone and cleared the way for Christ's return. And I firmly believe that that's what's going to happen.
But it is an energy that probably takes all the religions combined. Would we recognize it as an individual? As you said, the Antichrist is an energy, but then you went
It's
on
released
with
through people.
It can
Right.
be released,
Certainly.
exactly.
Certainly. Just like God always works through people. God doesn't
Right.
show up. He,
No,
A
you
footnote.
can't
he
wait
has
for
my
it coming
dentist
in
tell
the
me when
clouds.
there's a new job, you know?
A footnote on your Red Heifer.
Yes.
I know over in the state of Tennessee, here in the United States, they were able to find the pure blood of the Red Heifer. That this, now not by, as I say, I don't believe in coincidence,
Yes.
but they were able, it took them years and years and years and years and years to do this, to trace the pure blood.
The
It
line.
had to be pure. And they traced it to a farm
remember
in Tennessee, and this man had a herd of pure red stock. It is no longer there. It has been airlifted,
Interesting.
and it is in Israel right now.
Interesting.
Isn't it? See, no coincidence.
No, I don't think so either. You asked how will we know it's him? Well, first of all...
Or her.
Or her. Could be. By the way, we talked about the masters of the kingdom of heaven, these great spiritual beings. Some of them are female.
Yes.
For example, Joan of Arc, the master who was Joan of Arc, the master who was the Madonna is another female master. It's my information, and I believe, I'm firmly convinced, and you don't have to be, that
Disclaimer.
he is waiting for the right time. He's already here. He's living in the outskirts of London. He came as the Bible said. I will come as a thief in the night. Stay alert. Stay awake. He has done that. He is living in the outskirts of London, in the Asian community of London, waiting for the right time to come forward, because he will not infringe our free will. Our
On our
free will
free
is
choice.
sacred,
Of course.
Right.
which is part of the story of Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
You know, that's how we learn and grow, is through free choice. So he will not infringe our free will. He won't come and say, "I am here." You know,
No.
everything's going to be okay. He's not going to do that. He will be interviewed on TV. He will be interviewed on at least one U.S. major network. He will be interviewed probably on one or more Japanese networks, probably the BBC and a few others, and people will be interested. They will hear this man, and they will be fascinated with what he has to say. And they'll say, "I want to hear more. I want to hear more." And finally, there will be this tremendous worldwide press conference linked up by satellite television, satellite radio.
the windows of heaven.
Yes. All eyes shall hear, all ears, all eyes shall see, all ears shall hear. If people aren't watching TV or listening to the radio, they will still hear his voice in their head, if they're at all open to the possibility that he will be on TV, and there are 3 ways that you will know it is him, to finally answer your question.
I knew you'd get there.
Number 1, we will see his face on TV, but his lips won't move. We will hear his words in our own heads. I'm getting chills. In our own language. In whatever our language is, that's how we will hear his words in our head. Telepathy.
I'm getting chills too now. It's catching.
Secondly, as he speaks to the world, we will feel the love of God in our hearts like we have never felt it before.
Well, that would be a good sign
There
to
could
me.
be a lot of tears that day. Yes,
You bet.
the Antichrist can't do that.
Right.
Trust the love in your heart.
Yeah, exactly.
We will feel this tremendous love in our hearts. People driving on the freeway will have to pull over because tears will be streaming down their faces. Third, while he's speaking, simultaneously with his addressing us, there will be hundreds of thousands of miracle healings around the world. And in those 3 ways, we will know that this is the world teacher. This is a great teacher who has come to not for the end of the world, but to help us fix this mess that we have created of our world if we will follow his suggestions. He will not wave a magic wand.
Right.
We have to do the work. And those are the 3 ways that we will know that this great teacher is here. So if you hear about an important press conference that's going to be held, I suggest
don't miss it.
Tune in and stay open. And if people have only 10% belief that what I just said is possible, then they have they're open that 10%. They will have that 10% experience of this happening, and then they can make up their own minds.
Right.
And that's what we all have to do. Run it through our common sense, through our life's experience, and make up our own minds. Because that's our free will.
It will be the people that will call him the teacher. He will not call himself.
Right.
Here I am.
Yes.
You see,
He will not be a
we the
religious
people
teacher.
will say, we will give him his title.
That'll give me credence right there if he's not a religious teacher.
He will not be a religious teacher. He will come to feed the world, to house the world. His priorities are to feed the starving millions, shelter and clothing, education as a privilege, as a right, and health care as a right for all people.
It's something we all want.
That's where he'll start, if we're willing to do the work. I think this is an incredibly wonderful time to be alive. I think it's a privilege to be alive now. I can't wait. Now, there's only one way to know if this is going to happen, and that's to stick around and find out. Because you're going to find out.
I plan on doing
what
that.
I say is true or it isn't.
I'm going to live to be 120, so I'll be here.
So it's my information. Within the next 6 months to 5 years, this will happen.
6 months to 5 years.
Yes.
Okay, on that note, I think we're going to stop. And I had so many more questions, but this has been fascinating.
Maybe next time.
6 months to 5 years. Remember that, 6 months to 5 years.
Okay.
That's good.
I wonder if it would come across on videotape. If you're not home to watch it, if it'll have the same effect
If you
on
tape it, oh sure.
Oh, sure.
You think?
Yeah,
Sure,
it'll come
and that
through the
energy
tube.
of love will be tape recorded
And
on
it'll
the
be
tape.
on the tape also.
And you
Has
will
to be.
receive it as you play the tape back. Absolutely.
Cool.
Any healing energies will also you will receive.
Ooh,
Yes.
I want to be there for that
we
healing.
need to tape it.
I
yes.
love that.
Thank you again, Dick.
my pleasure.
Been a
Yes.
pleasure.
Thank you
Just
so much.
wonderful.
Thank
Blessings.
And just keep up the good work. And
Thanks.
if we all keep a good thought, maybe we can pull this planet together.
Yes,
and
we can.
become
Not maybe, we
one
will.
People and one planet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
The world teacher has said, I know your choice, and I'm glad.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. And before I get into a discussion of the video itself, I'd just like to remind you that some of the things we talk about and practice, the group that is studying the Ageless Wisdom teaching and whatnot, is transmission meditation. It's a meditation for the new age. In fact, I have Benjamin Cram's book here. And I don't think we talked enough about him earlier, but here's one of his books, Transmission, a Meditation for the New Age. And this is available online. I think it may be available as a free download. You're not going to double check that because at least 3 of his books are. And transmission meditation is a stepping down of the energies that come from the spiritual hierarchy. You know, the way the electricity from the power lines is converted by a transformer and stepped down in power before it enters your house, so it doesn't blow out all the fuses. In the same way, these great energies that the Masters of Wisdom are the scientific custodians of is entering our planet. And when you do transmission meditation, you become part of that transmission. If these energies weren't stepped down, they would just bounce off the mass of humanity, yours truly included. But when you do transmission meditation, you're helping all of creation here on planet Earth and all of humanity absorb these energies. And what for? Well, these are helping accelerate our evolution. And as that happens, it improves your health, your intelligence, your ability to love, your creativity, your longevity, everything that humanity wants. So why wouldn't we want to meditate? It's a way of bringing the soul in closer contact with the vehicle on the dense physical plane, the man of mind, body, and emotions. And so bring the soul and the spirit's energy into this vehicle to infuse it and to spiritualize matter. And in so doing, we're helping in spiritualize all matter throughout the planet and helping all the kingdoms and helping all of humanity. So, and once again, as we always say, don't believe us, whatever that may mean. Look into it for yourself. And so going back to the video at long last, I recall how the host talked about the news media. And to steal another quote from Benjamin Cram, he characterized them as the hysterical news media that loves only a crisis. And for that reason, and others, we're not hearing enough about some of the great things occurring on the planet, including the emergence of Maitreya. And then Mr. Larson had pointed out how there is much good news. As I said, not necessarily always being reported upon, despite the economic upsets, the illness, the environmental degradation and war and so on. Even as this phenomena is occurring, there is an equally powerful, actually more powerful phenomena occurring. And they're sort of happening at the same time and passing one another. One is going out with the tide, all the negativity, and one is coming in, all the justice and love. And that's increasing with potency every day. And let me see, what else did they talk about? Oh, Dick Larson had talked about how Maitreya and the Masters provide miracles that the religious can relate to. As you heard mentioned, statues that move or weep or bleed, or, as was mentioned with the milk miracle, actually absorb the milk. And I know that one of the hosts had mentioned how they tried to debunk that. Well, even if that was true, that some of the statues were porous, all the milk in India wouldn't fit in those statues, and that's how much, just about how much got used up, as Mr. Larson pointed out. And of course, there were statues that weren't porous at all, such as bronze, as he mentioned. And then I know that the host mentioned that 2,000 years ago, that manifestation of the Christ for Maitreya did overshadow one of his most famous disciples, Jesus, as he also overshadowed, or as the Buddha overshadowed Prince Gautama. In that case, he could only remain for 3 years because humanity just wasn't ready. And that's pretty astounding. A man who embodied the law of love like no one else had in the history of the planet was killed, crucified. And here you have the Christians blaming the Jews, which they conveniently overlooked that Jesus was a Jew. So without the Jewish faith, there would be no Christianity. And it wasn't the Jews that put Christ to death or Jesus to death. It was the Romans. So let's just remember that. Sure, they whipped the populace up, but that's the way people thought back then. They didn't think that much. There was a herd mentality across the planet, except for some of the leaders and the priests. And that has since changed. Now, as you heard Dick mention, humanity's come out of the herd and we've learned how to think. Or rather, we're beginning to learn how to think. And then, of course, they mention an explanation of the Antichrist energy, which is deliberately released by hierarchy in any one era to make way for the coming of the Christ. And in the modern era, they mentioned how that could be epitomized in someone like Hitler, who was not the Antichrist, but the energy worked through him from the lords of materiality, the dark forces, the forces of evil, as we would call them, who work in opposition to the masters of wisdom. That energy was released through him, through Mussolini, through the group of militarists in Japan, and the forces of darkness, the lords of materiality, were working on the Axis side of the Axis powers, while the masters of wisdom, the forces of light, were working on the side of the Allies, as flawed as the Allies were at that time and still are. So I hope that's enough explanation of the Antichrist energy, but you can always send in your questions to the website and let us know what you think. And of course, they also mentioned the miracle of the red heifer, the cow that is that reddish color that hadn't been seen for thousands of years. That that breed seemed to have disappeared from the planet. And suddenly, miraculously, as predicted in the Jewish tradition, it has reappeared. And that's one sign. There have been many signs. Actually, I have a little flyer here from Share International, and there's the heifer, and there's the white calf that was predicted by the Native Americans. A lot of people had predictions from a lot of different cultures. So what else can we say about that? Oh, yes. When people keep asking. It's taking so long for Maitreya to emerge. Well, Maitreya has a lot of things to consider. Thousands of things, as a matter of fact. All sorts of cosmic and divine and karmic laws that he has to work with and make sure that he doesn't violate. This sort of thing, humanity doesn't really have a clue about. But it is explained in some of Ben's books. It's explained in Blavatsky, in the Alice Bailey books, and so on and so forth. So we can go into it more depth there and here in future episodes. So when people get impatient, we realize there's no reason to be. Maitreya is already out in the world. And he appeared in a guise to members of a Share International group in Holland, and when they expressed that, but it takes so long, and he said something to the effect of, "What are you talking about? All is well. Maitreya is already out in the world. Everything is well in hand." And so that's what we must remember, and we must work harder to let people know about this, so he can emerge faster. We create a climate of expectancy in which he can step. Now, you don't have to believe to the extent that some of us do. You can dismiss it 95%. Just say, well, I heard about this nonsense on an internet show, or my friends were talking about it. I don't believe it, but this is what they said. People don't need to necessarily believe, whatever that may mean. But they need to hear it, because on a soul level, we contend everybody already knows about it. And that information will trickle down or bubble up to the personality level sooner or later, and the person will have their own aha moment from the inside out. Their own intuition, their own common sense will inform them, not us. So what else do they talk about? Oh, how to recognize him on the day of declaration. Yes, that's a very important part of Dick Larson's interview. He said Maitreya will communicate with us telepathically. You'll see his face on the television or in your mind. That way, no one over the age of 14 will miss it. If you don't have a television or you're away from one, you will still hear it. In your own mind, you will see a vision of him, but his lips won't move. Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom communicate through telepathy. So in this case, they will communicate with us telepathically, just like they do with each other. In addition to that, you heard Dick mention that you will feel a tremendous love in your heart. and a feeling of trust and innocence and wonder that you haven't felt since you were a child. And this people will remember. They'll say, I don't remember how I felt when I felt like that, when I was a little boy or a little girl. This is wonderful. And that's not something, as Dick pointed out, that the Antichrist could do. Because some people think, ironically, that Maitreya is the Antichrist. And in this way, they will be assured that he is not. And of course, Maitreya has told us the Antichrist in this era has come and gone, done his work, and made a pathway, opened up the opportunities for the Christ to step into the world. And so he has. And once again, not to belabor the topic, but to emphasize it, as Dick had said, your own intuition and common sense will inform you, and this is what you need to employ. This information is designed to stimulate the mind, stimulate your own innate wisdom, and most importantly, stimulate and grow your intuition. And your own intuition will inform you. Your personality might say, this is just a bunch of hogwash, but your soul knows better. And it's best that your own soul inform your personality, and not me, because I can never take the place of that. And it doesn't mean as much when it comes from the outside. The only lasting change comes from inside, as everybody knows. And that's how it will occur. Now, I know they had also mentioned in the interview about things that Maitreya might provide, but just to clarify, I'm sure what Dick Larson meant was that Maitreya and the Masters will show us, will encourage us, will inspire us, will give us the tools to end hunger and starvation, provide health care for all, education for all, housing for everyone, to bring about economic and social justice, because the spiritual crises we're having today are in the social and economic fields and political fields, not the religious fields. So this is where our focus must lie at this time. So they're going to provide the inspiration. We're going to provide the elbow grease. We're going to do the work. As Maitreya put it, I am the architect only of the shining temple of truth. You, my friends, are the willing builders of that shining temple of truth. In other words, what is the shining temple of truth? The new civilization. The new civilization, of course, as we've said, built on trust and love and equality and justice, and of course, all those basic human needs fulfilled for everyone at last. Adequate and quality food, affordable education, housing, health care, a living wage, adequate leisure time for all, so that people can discern where they came from, why they're here, and where they're going, world peace for everyone, and a clean environment. And this will open up vistas of incredible potential. We'll see an explosion of creativity and of knowledge and of wisdom. Music that's never been written before, hitherto unknown science, some of which will be revealed to us by the Masters once we've abandoned war, and progress in every field of humanity. Things that might have happened earlier if we were ready, but we did not demonstrate that we were ready, and thus we had to wait. So what we're talking about is love in action, and that's what counts. Love in action. That's what the message is about. That's what the show is about. That's what you are and what the Masters are. The embodiment of love and justice and trust. And with that, we will close the show, and we hope to see you again soon. And in the meantime, expand your mind. And I'll try and take my own advice. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.